Hello everyone and welcome to Valenti Guitars. For those of you who don't know me, who probably are the majority, I am Luigi Valenti and I am professional luthier specialized in building boutique custom instruments. And today I would like to show you around my workshop and how I do things for all my customers. And so if you would like, may you wish follow me around and see how things are done. Here is where everything starts, which is the Woodstock. This is where I keep like 90% of the woods I use normally for my builds, and all the other parts that are a little bit more exotic, I leave them to my suppliers and then I order them in case I need to. So for what concerns the bodies of the guitars, I normally use some black limba or even white corina, swamp ash and mahogany. And then we use flint maple, which is used for necks and tops, and the ebony for the fretboards, and again wenge or wenge, however you want to call it, for the necks again. So as you can see, I like to buy the wood in raw boards so that I can use it the way I need to every time. And also it allows it to dry and settle a little bit better. I would like to spend a little bit more time talking about the flame maple that I use, which is taken from the same forest of the Stradivari violins, basically. And the reason why I use this kind of maple is that it is whiter in color compared to the American version, and it is a little bit softer, which makes it a little bit more versatile in regards to the instruments I make. So of this board here, I will use the quarter saw bit, which is this section here, and this section here actually, for the necks, and the flat sawn part, which is the central one, to make the tops out of it. Now, once the cuts have been chosen, you end up having, first of all, something like this, which is a raw block for the tops, which after it's dried again, ends up in something that might look like this. Of course, this is a different type of maple, this is quilted and that one is flamed, but still worth looking, I guess. Now, of course, this process happens also for the bodies, which are rough cut and then left dry, and of course for the necks. Now, if you look at the very edge of the board, you can see what I'm talking about when I speak about quarter sawn. As you can see, the lines in here are perfectly perpendicular to this surface, and this gives the best stability possible for the neck itself. Now, I could stay here talking about different cuts, different type of woods for quite a long time. So I think it should be best moving on the next part of the process, which is the machining. First step of the process is cutting the wood length and then planing and thickness it down with the planer thicknesser and the planer. After that is done, it goes to the sander thicknesser, which allows me to get the wood at a thickness of about a tenth of a centimeter of precision. Once that is done, it's time to move on to the CNC machine. CNC. Up until my number 50, I used to do all my instruments entirely by hand. Actually, you can see the video of the number 50 making off in this side of the screen, I guess. And after that, what happened is that I received an increased amount of orders, and in order to get all the instruments done and giving them the proper amount of time, I needed a very reliable and also not questioning helping hand, which is this machine down here. Now, this is not a magic tool that allows you to get the instrument done from start to finish without touching it. And actually, the way I use it is more for roughing the necks and bodies, and then do the finesse work still by hand. You will see why also this is important in the later steps. This is where I spend pretty much most of my time. We got the tables for the neck work, frets and all alike, plus the tables for the body's work and the final assembly of the entire instrument. I would like to show you how the body comes out from the CNC, which, as you can see, you've got something which is pretty much finished. It really needs just some sanding and some finalizing on some steps with something like this one with a beautiful filter paper top, for instance. So once the body has reached this stage and then this stage, it's basically ready for the final part, which is assembling it to the neck itself, which is what we're going to talk about next. Next are the next part of this process, and I've prepared here a little sequence of the various stages that will end in something like this, which is a completed neck. So after it has been cut and planed and machined, it comes out from the CNC in this shape, basically. Now we've got the channels for the truss rod and the carbon fiber rods, and the neck is rough shaped on the back. Now, a couple of words about these two things. First of all, the neck is rough shaped, and you will see it here with the fretboard on, which has quite a bit of shoulder and quite a bit of thickness of it. The reason being is that this way I can hand carve it according to each client need. And to be honest, a hand-carved neck has way much more feeling on it rather than a completely perfectly done machined CNC neck. So at least this is what my clients told me, so I try to believe them. So apart from this, the carbon fiber rods. Now, these are pieces of what you can find on the market for carbon fiber rods for necks, and since I don't like them because I think they are too thin, what I've done is I reached an Italian company that does F1 carbon fiber components, and I asked them to make them the way I would like them to be, which is something like this. Now if you compare them, there's quite a bit of a difference, and this allows me to have a very stiff and resonant neck. The neck stays in this shape for at least a couple of weeks. It has time to settle down, it has time to move a little bit, and then the fretboard is glued on. Once that is done, it rests again for at least another couple of weeks. With that done, what we're gonna do is simply replaning by hand the fretboard, because no matter what you do, no matter how seasoned the wood is, after you have glued down two pieces, they will probably end up moving. So this is not something that you can do afterwards on a CNC, and therefore it is done by hand with various tools that you will probably see on the screen at the moment. After all these processes, frets are installed, and I have a quite varied selection of frets which go from nickel silver, stainless steel, gold, nickel silver, depending on whatever the clients request, really. And they are put on the fretboard alongside with the inlays, which can be either custom shapes or simply dots. And then it's time for the final shaping of the back and final sanding. And once that is done, we end up with something like this, which then goes on the body, making a guitar at the end of the day. Once the neck has been glued onto the body, you end up with something like this, which looks like a guitar. After that, it's a matter of having a little bit more of cleaning of the glued areas and bits and pieces here and there, and staining the top, and if the guitar has a flame maple neck, also the neck to match the top. After that is done, we take the guitar and bring it into the spraying booth where the final finishing process takes place. So the finishing process, it's something that takes quite a lot of time, and about a month, and something that it's quite complex and of which I'm really fussy about. Now, as you can see here, there's quite a lot of light in here. The reason being is that you need to check every single details of the guitar while spraying to check for defects and alike. Finishing takes a lot of time because after each layer has been applied, you need to have the time for the lacquer to settle down and cure and get absorbed by the wood itself. After that is done, it is sanded down to the tiniest amount possible and then resprayed until I reach the final thickness needed, or until it doesn't go down more. At the end of the process, you end up having something like 1/10 of a millimeter of thickness on high gloss parts and way much less than that on open pore satin finish, which I usually use for the back of the guitar and the neck. Now, this is very important because the thinner the amount of lacquer, the better the instrument will resonate. It's like you have a coat over a resonating object. The thicker and harder the coat, the more it will absorb the vibration of the instrument. So the thinner the lacquer, the better the instrument will sound. After the spraying process is finished, it's just a matter of buffing the high gloss parts, and then we move to the final assembly and setup. But before, let's talk about pickups, which it is what we're gonna see next. Pickups are something on which I do really care about because they allow me to carve the sound of the instrument according to the client's need and also according to the woods that have been chosen for the build. So, as many other aspects of this process, materials are crucial. I do keep a pretty wide selection of pickup wire, which varies from modern type 1, from the vintage type that were used in the 50s and 60s, and so that I can decide what I need every time, basically. This is for more my models of pickups, whilst these other one here are for the replicas of vintage pickups. One other aspect are slugs and screws for the poles of the humbuckers, which are made to my own specs by an Italian company who makes also the jack sockets for me. The reason being is that sometimes the alloy used in these components are not that much consistent, and therefore I decided to make my own alloy and request it every time that I need it. Now, considering all the various parts and components, the real thing that needs to be done at the end is design a pickup using the right magnet, the right poles and the right wire according to the need of the customer, and then assembling it properly. Of course, also magnets are very important, and I do use a various range of them, going from Alnico 5, Alnico 3, Alnico 8 and Ceramic 8. Again, also this one are made on order, so that I make sure that quality of them and the magnetization of them is on point every time, although I also have a magnetizer and a Gauss meter in order to check that every time they are according to what I requested. Once all these components are put together according to the design that has been requested by the client, it's just a matter of putting them on the guitar. After the spray room, we end up with something like this. In this case, we got a ice blue flame maple top with matching flame maple neck and a satin bottom neck. Now, after this, we do a rough setup and assembly, which looks a little bit like this other one here, where we got rigid tuners, roughly cut nut and strings. The guitar stays in this shape for 3 to 4 days to settle down a bit, and then it is brought to Rome to one of my closest friend and colleague, Luca Cesaroni from Chloe Guitars, where the guitar gets the blacking process, which is basically a scanning and fret leveling of the frets that gives us a precision in terms of fret leveling of about 0.004 of a millimeter, which is something that is not really achievable by hand. Once we've done that, we take back, I always say we, but to be honest, it's me. I take the instrument back, and it's just a matter of the real final assembly, which is putting back the bridge and tuners on, polishing the frets, doing the electronics, doing the installing the pickups, nut, and after that we got a completed instrument, which then goes into its own case and then to the final destination, which is to his owner. And that's pretty much it. What I wanted to show you with this video is basically that Valenti Guitars is a one-man band, and the main goal of all of this is that trying to achieve the best possible result, not caring much about the total number of instruments that are built in 1 year, for instance. I have plateaued my numbers at about 50 instruments, which is the amount on which I can basically take care of all the aspects without asking to other person to take care of them, so that every client and every instrument is started and finished by myself, and everyone basically talks with myself. Again, thank you very much for watching. Comment down below if there is something else you would like to see. As you have made noticed, I have found this kind of video quite enjoyable to make. And I would like to bring you inside the life of Valenti Guitars a little bit further. Hit like, hit subscribe, and see you next time.